let's start with, I first want to start with just some general reactions to what's been shared. If you want to add some additional bio background, great. But, what are some kind of top-line reactions to some of the themes that you've heard from me or heard from some of our friends on the videos? Jennifer? Yeah, okay.
Bummer. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. I was at CES. Truth is, I was at CES last year. I was virtually at CES, compliments of Pete this year. In terms of overall reactions, I would say year on year, the value and the robustness and the tangibleness of the things that are coming out are moving from being ideas to real. I was at the P&G booth, and in terms of bio background, the last role, I was at P&G for 26 years. The last role I had was to lead the business creation. And OpDay was actually not called OpDay at the time that I was leading that group. It was called something else. But it's interesting to see the realization and the practicality, and I also worked on the Gillette business, so the heated razor was a dream then. And I think that the speed with which things are going from idea to translated into tangible application, I think, is meaningful. And I would say that even in the year that's transpired, bringing these alive and kind of bringing the consumer back into the electronics show is something that's interestingly happening. At some point, we'll talk about connected health, and I think the reality of that translation and how can the consumer come in and really bringing the consumer into healthcare and then using technology as an enabler, as a disruptor, as a problem solver, I think is very exciting, and it's, the possibility is moving into being a reality is probably the biggest thing that I saw and my takeaway.
Thank you. Megan?
Thank you, Pete, for inviting VMO to be here. So I'm a group director of integrated strategy and lead North American integrated strategy across VMO. So that's really helping clients solve their problems and bringing together a lot of the subject matter experts. We've seen a lot of individualization in terms of strategy in an agency as large as ours, and we've kind of identified a need that there still needs to be that general strategist that brings it all together with the client lens in mind. So Jennifer kind of mentioned something that I was thinking as well, which is the practical application. I feel like finally this year we're seeing a lot more of the utility in services and the actual practical application. Personally, I get excited when I see tech that is helping make the world a better place, tech that is teaching, that is helping people be more creative, that's bringing specialty to the masses, and that's also always fun to see when they're making our routine things a little bit less painful. So I feel like we did see the consumer come back into the show, and I think sometimes it's all about the individual pieces of technology, and we don't have a chance to adapt that or perfect it before the stuff that's new becomes old, so it's exciting to see that.
I feel like a hashtag is emerging. Hashtag consumers back.
Good for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I've been able to go to CES for the last 4 years, and sometimes you see year over year these things start to layer, and you see version 1, maybe even version 1, and then you see them steadily grow. The nice thing is virtually seeing everything this year is understanding that we're actually solving real life problems. As VCs and investors, we talk a lot about the future of work, but I think CES really nails what the future of life is going to look like. So I found that to be really super exciting.
Fantastic. Jared?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I know you have a plan for them to start eating now.
Do the panelists get a free? No. Okay.
We're just going to start playing Jenga. I'll start from the bottom.
No.
Okay, so my name is Jared Goldman. I am the founder of Double Shot. We're a multiplayer matchmaking and wagering company for video games. I think this CES is incredibly exciting because there are so many pieces of the puzzle that are coming together when it comes to mobile gaming. A lot of people don't think about the feasibility of using your cell phone to competitively play video games, and a lot of that came down to things like input lag, the time that you do something to the time it actually happens on the screen and interacting with someone else. From that to just bandwidth, and so with 5G, with these different devices, it's really going to unlock half of a really big industry most people don't even know much about. So it's really exciting.
That's Andy. Any particular technologies that really jumped out that you haven't mentioned that just you see lots of possibilities in? You can't say 5G.
Okay,
But you can't say
well,
5G.
I could say 5G, but I would, that's about the end of what I would say. You know, I think it's interesting. I think the comment was made in terms of solving real world problems. And I think for me that is part of the evolution, right? Technology is interesting. Translated or applied technology that moves things forward in a meaningful way is particularly exciting. And when I went last year, I landed in the AARP booth. And I was like, what the hell is what is AARP doing here? And it was amazing because there were innovators from AARP and there were AARP members in the booth, wearing virtual reality devices, experiencing a trip abroad with their grandchild. And when you think about, what are the experiences and the possibilities of maybe I can't go to, so I have an 81-year-old mom and 83-year-old stepdad, and they may or may not be able to travel with their grandchildren to a safari in Africa, which is something they always wanted to do, but that may not be a reality for us anymore. But is that a possibility that they can take together with their grandkids? Or solving, and if you think about what you saw from some of the innovations, solving some of the issues of social isolation and using what is technology as a tool, as an enabler to a better life and a better way of really being. Other technologies that are helping solve opioid addiction problems. One of our portfolio companies is a company called Clarigen Health that really focuses on upstage early prediction of suicidality. So how can we help a therapist listen to a session that they are having with an individual, and because of and based upon their language, their speech pattern, how do we go upstream and begin to solve issues or diabetes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there were a couple of things out of Voice It and Talk It out of AARP as well. People who can't necessarily communicate as clearly as they might like to. People who are beginning to decline. How do you maintain or ideally improve their overall health? And it is through that connected technology that we allow people to maintain quality of life, or in hopefully some instances restore or improve quality of life so that they can stay engaged and hopefully live longer, better, healthier lives as best as possible.
Thank you, spot on. Others?
Yeah, I'll add that I was excited this year that they took a little bit stronger of an approach of approaching sexual health. Last year there was kind of like a hubbub about this sex toy that had applied for an award. They won and then had it taken away. It was a company called Laura DiCarlo, and they had a new robotics sex toy called Ose. And Laura used her voice with the CTA team, and now there's kind of really a new category. And for years and years, sexual health was very much a men's category. And now she's gotten to the point where now the category is actually talking about men and women, because there are multiple people involved with these things. So there are. So I'm excited to see that change specifically, and the things that are coming out of it, and the people doing that work. Got some really strong robotics work happening, and the women involved doing that work are incredibly impressive.
So a couple of things I kind of made some notes as I was looking through the awards, and I think Jennifer was talking about improving the world. Certainly a lot coming out with hearables along the same lines of what you were talking about, or our one dot on supply chain logistics. One of the things I noted was a company called Food Rescue that does supply chain innovation for food recovery, and they're redistributing to try to reduce the amount of wasted food that's happening. So just thinking about practical applications for things like that. I talked about technology that teaches, so one thing that kind of excites me as a musician, they've got Redison, I think it's called, that actually is a musician, and you can put the sensors on drumsticks and learn to play the drums on a pillow with no noise. So I think the idea that STEM has certainly taken off in our schools, and it's exciting to me that maybe it's going to start to get into the more STEAM space, and we're going to see the arts becoming more accessible through being able to learn how to paint or play a musical instrument. So that was really exciting to me. A couple of other things, I think, do I get bonus points if I mention Quibi first on the panel? So Quibi's a streaming service that's coming out in April. It's meant to be viewed on the phone. It's 10-minute episodes, and they're shooting it in both portrait and landscape. So the idea is that as you're watching the show, you can turn your phone and start to see it from a different vantage point. I think that technology, kind of like maybe parallel reality, like the idea that you're going to be able to get multiple vantage points and film is going to be shot and streamed through 5G is really interesting. And
You're forgetting the most important factoid here.
the Samsung TV?
No, there's a small investor that also put a large amount of money in FC
Indeed.
Cincinnati.
Yes.
Is the co-founder of Quibi, and that's Meg Whitman.
Meg Whitman, absolutely, yeah. And coming at it from an entertainment perspective instead of a tech perspective, I think is exciting. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. The whole vertical viewing, we'll see if the Samsung TV, that might be the first generation of how that comes to life, but it's on my underwhelmed list.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing up the content point.
Yeah.
It got a lot of attention, and even yesterday, Mark Pritchard in the P&G Life Lab dedicated a full hour to a one-on-one with Jeffrey Katzenberg on the Quibi model. So clearly, big advertisers are taking this very, very seriously.
All right, so I feel like I'm at a disadvantage being the gamer guy, so that's most of the stuff I focused on. They're talking like really cool things that deeply impact your life, and I'm going to start talking about remote controls and whatnot. So one of the things that I think is really, really cool is Razer came out with, it basically turns your smartphone into a remote control. So there's a lot of people, a lot of gamers. There's about 2.2 billion gamers on the planet, and a lot of them are using mobile. A lot of them don't have access to a $1,500, $2,000, or $2,000 gaming PC. A lot of them don't have access to PlayStation or Xbox, and they're gaming on their phones. And what happens is there's a lot of input lag from the time you do something on your screen to the time it actually does it. So traditionally, gaming on your phone or on a tablet has just been for fun. It really isn't competitive because you can only get so good. Well, companies like Razer are creating, it's kind of like the Switch. Nintendo was the first to really do it well, where you have two pieces that snap in and they're joysticks with buttons, and it turns your phone into a traditional, not only a controller, but the screen, and it really puts down the input lag. Now, I know a lot of people probably don't understand why input lag is important. Let's talk about it like this. Let's say you were driving your car, and in a simulator, you could only, when you turn the wheel, like a second later, then it starts to turn. Well, thank God it's not like real life, and you don't have to maneuver every day like that. Well, for gamers on mobile, it's like that, where you kind of have to figure out exactly, do I have to move early? Do I have to start shooting this gun or this racing wheel? You know how that works. Now with Razer and Kishi, you can literally plug it directly into your phone, and it's as similar as a controller on Google Stadia or Xbox or PlayStation. So it's really going to change a lot of things. It's going to open up gaming opportunities for so many people across the world that really only ever have a chance for it to be a hobby. Now it can really be something that drives economic opportunity in both the countries and the players.
I'm going to add something to that. So, I have two children. They're 11 and 12, two boys. And, when they're first born, you buy lots of blocks and, little toys that they can play with. And gradually, they move into electronics. I can say that 90% of my Christmas shopping was for games. And, it was substantially more than I ever spent before. And these are all things that I spent money on. So if we're thinking about maybe this particular room is not the demographic, but if you think about the generations that are coming up, this is what they're going to be spending their money on. They spend 75 to 80% of their time socially online. A lot of that is with games or via social media. So, my kids play with their PlayStation remotes in the back seat on their cell phones. So I totally get it. One ports his gaming PC from his dad's house because we don't transport it. So he could play on the gaming PC at my house, but from his dad's way across town. So, these are real life problems for children right now. and adults, but mine in particular.
Megan, you grab the microphone.
I did. One of the things I think we saw is the convergence of gaming and health and VR, and there was the cycle that you can connect your mobile phone and it's a game, but you're exercising and then driving through. It's not a Peloton; it's actually affordable, and you can drive through different race courses. And I don't know if it started at children or adults, but it looked interesting to me. I'm always looking for more exciting ways to exercise. I think as we see VR come even further into the stage, you're going to see fitness and VR really converging and providing some interesting entertainment opportunities that maybe get kids off of the couch, at least for a little bit.
And by the way, you saw the strategic pillars, but one of the kind of enabling capabilities that we've been spending a lot of time, especially with Lisa, Greg Crawford, Glenn Platt, and our friends from Miami, where they really specialize is could we become a center of gravity for gamification, especially as a lot of these new questions emerge, and as we see some cross-fertilization opportunities, because you can talk to any hospital, and gamification quickly enters the discussion when you're thinking about better ways of driving compliance and the like. So
We have audience participation.
yes. Oh yes. Okay, please. Shall we give her a magic microphone? Okay.
My voice does carry.
Wait there. Yes. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a question. Did you guys see anything within, as you were mentioning the pillars, I was curious about the fintech side. Did you guys see a lot of energy around like the consumer side of fintech? And what was the kind of the trends that you guys saw there?
Yeah, I would say it wasn't as I wouldn't say it was as audience facing from here's a fintech startup, but there's a revolution taking place in how in seamless, friction-free transactions, and literally everything at CES has wickedly smart transactional capability behind it, and there's no question that those fintech startups of the $60 billion are behind that. And there were some out there, but I wouldn't say that was, fintech wasn't necessarily the overt billboard that you saw at CES. Anybody want to add more perspective to that or disagree?
I would, I just don't know what
I mean, gaming is highly.
I don't know anything about fintech.
Well, you kind of do.
Okay, so yes, what I'm doing is wagering in video games. Now that doesn't directly correlate to fintech, but we need to find a way to enable all these transactions. I'm not talking about tens of thousands, I'm talking about hundreds of millions. So it's going to be an interesting landscape. There's a couple of players right now in video game wagering. None of them are really large, and so we're trying to figure out who's the first really big player to change the landscape of everything. And so, yeah, just stay tuned in the near future. Gaming and fintech is going to be a really, really large conversation. So to put it in perspective, 2.2 billion gamers on the planet, and I've got reports from Global Web Index. They sampled over 1 million people, and what they found was 36% of gamers, all gamers, would quit their job today and game full time if they could sustain themselves as a professional. That doesn't tell me how much money you need to make. If you're making $100 grand a year doing what you're doing, and I can only offer you 40, 50, 60, is that enough? I don't know. But what it's saying is the market is looking for a way to make money doing what they love. For hundreds of millions of people, it's playing video games. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the fintech, how it adapts to gaming. There's this big sleeping giant that's about to be awakened. You're seeing games more and more prevalent as the years go on. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really big part of the fintech competitive landscape.
I think the thing that I would add or build on that is, we talk about pillars and the fact that you've shown this vertical and horizontal, and they aren't pillars, right? I think, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I think that the reality is that they are, they're coming in and out of each other all the time. So between Procter and Cincy Tech, I spent almost 5 years at Cincinnati Children's. You're talking about gamification. There is someone who's developed, there's a lot of different ideas that are there. And how do you help kids go to sleep with anesthesia so that they can have their procedures? And in many instances, that is a very, very frightening thing for a child. Right? I'm going to put a mask on you when they're really little, they don't know. But when they get a bit bigger, I'm going to put a mask on you and hope you go to sleep, because that'll enable the physician to do or the clinician to do what they're that child go to sleep. Someone earlier today mentioned about using, I think it was the one of the, maybe the P&G Venture winner, with regard to using virtual reality and pain management, chronic pain management. There were other things in the sleep space. So again, is that connected health? Is that gamification? The answer is yes, right? And I think that the other thing to think about is these buckets as enablers to each other, right? So, you know, I too would love to stop doing perhaps what I do and do what I love to do full time. I vacation, I think, full time. I make money doing that. But the point is, if the gap is, or the problem is the financial mechanism, right, to be able to enable the gaming or the gamers to do what they want to do, then how do you define that problem and bring technology as the enabler from a solution standpoint to create that reality? And that's what I feel like I'm beginning to see in the context of CES and many of the startups that we've got. Like, they're solving real problems. And I think often when you start with the problem, right, then unbelievably creative people, many of whom are in this room, are figuring out how they harness their desires and their wishes against that. And we can bring capability and capital and talent against that, and then create, you know, the economic engine that we are all trying to do within our region.
Yeah, and I think like there needs to be a conversation almost about like what is a gamer, and are you gamifying games, but then you're also gamifying healthcare, and then you're gamifying everything else. So like if that's the definition of a gamer, then I guess I game all the time on my Peloton, or I'm gaming when I'm using my new map, you know, and I'm spending just as much as probably anybody else on games.
And I think it's really about engagement, right? How do you have, you know, what is it that I'm trying to do, and in what way can I or we or communities, and there's a whole lot of community activity that's going on as well, to bring people together to engage, to move forward.
Outstanding. By the way, if any companies are here, is Elisa still here? Our innovation services group has been doing a lot of work with companies on this whole gamification area, so if you want to learn more, let me know. I do want to ask you, first off, we're going to get some more questions, but if you have any final comments, and I'd also love if any of you want to jump in on what John shared about this fear economy, because I actually really agree with that, because I was actually quite surprised. And I do think real problems were being solved there, but it was probably the most notable shift that I saw in the startup area, maybe because that is just such a big opportunity. But I'd love to hear your perspective, including whether there might be some areas we could uniquely solve here.
Yeah, I saw something that I'm incredibly excited and terrified for. So I can't remember the full company name. It was Sunflower or something, but the gist of it is they've created a Sentinel. So it's a home security system that once it recognizes not only how large something is that's moving, its motion detection, it then sends out a drone that, that comes out with cameras that can interact with you and like be a sentinel on the perimeter of your house. So
But
where it is. I don't know what it can do once it gets there. It didn't look like it had like stun guns or lasers or anything, but I would definitely be shocked if I went to my friend's house and was greeted.
I have a dog too who does the same thing.
Yeah, right? It's a decent sized one.
That was great.
The selfie drones, those are less offensive, but could cause, maybe they'll stop all the Grand Canyon accidents of the selfie stick, so they replace the selfie stick with a teeny tiny drone. That's on my not so impressed with list. Because what if everybody had a selfie drone? That would get to be a problem. I don't know.
But other comments, I mean, again, it's kind of like an anxiety society. Is that a spot on insight? Is that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I had a similar, when I was listening to John, I had a similar reaction to Jared's comment, which is, wow, and I'm terrified, right? And it was interesting last year when I went through a lot of the baby tech stuff was all around, like, do I really want to watch my kid sleep? And what's the benefit of that to me? And is it fear, or is it, from a positive perspective, peace of mind? There's a startup here in town called Backseat Buddy. I don't know if anyone's heard of Backseat Buddy, but it is a device that sits underneath, basically in essence, it sits in a car seat. And it is a reminder device that's connected to the phone so that if, God forbid, one forgets their child in their car seat, they are reminded and there is communication back to it. And I was talking with the founders, it's a husband and wife team, and I was talking with Grant and Maria, and, you know, kind of what's the message, right? And if you buy, I said, who's going to buy this, right? Well, some, you know, people will buy it as a gift. And if you buy it, are you saying to that parent they are a bad parent? And what is the insight? And we got into a very interesting conversation around the difference between you're a bad person and fear and insecurity and anxiety and peace of mind. And so, you know, where on that continuum do you want to land? I feel a bit more comfortable in the peace of mind space, but I do think it's real, and there's a part of me that's actually quite saddened by it, right? That's the world that we're living in. And unfortunately, I think in some respects it's only possibly going to get more intense. But
let me acknowledge this hand that's in the back there.
So, well, I'll talk louder.
Louder, or we can give you a microphone.
So you were excited about that ability to go to the store and. Yeah, you were very excited about the ability to go to the store and have the displays change based on who I am and what I'm interested in. So I would probably not go to a store that did that, because I would say, that's too creepy. You know where I am, what I'm doing, and I'm doing it now. I like to wander the grocery store, go from aisle to aisle and back and forth. I don't want it to say, oh, you should be going over to this aisle and buying this right now.
Yeah, it's a great point, and one of the areas we've been thinking through at Cintrifuse, startup Cincy, is around this whole notion of trust economy. Like, if you are going to go in these directions, how do you build a level of trust where consumers, users are comfortable with that?
Is that really true though? Like, I think that we wander where they want us to wander, right? I don't think we're actually making all of our choices in the grocery store at this point, like ever. If you look at my cabinets, you can tell, like, those were not decisions I made before I went to the grocery store. So I think we're already being guided. I think those are just more overt.
Well, now looking at your house too. So the one thing that, and I've worked in food CPG for too many years to count at this point. But I think, you know, now one thing that's exciting to me is that they're getting inventory management. That LG and Samsung have finally put out smart appliances that can look in your fridge, can tell you what you've got, that know what you're using. Maybe they guided you to it in the store, maybe now you're just telling your fridge to auto reorder it. I think there's good and bad, right? So there's the, now Kroger knows not just what I buy, but how often I use it and what I'm doing. But we can also use that to give you AI recommendations on what to make to reduce the food waste problem and make your life easier. Companies for years have been trying to do that. Brands, that's one core problem brands are always trying to solve, but it really is too hard for somebody to manage scanning receipts so that we know what you've got in your fridge in order to make that recommendation. I think where this really gets interesting is when you marry it with subscription too, right? So the convergence of subscription and smart appliances. Now, what if you could have a subscription for your refrigerator, so every 2 years you got a new one. My husband and I built a house. We opted not to go for the smart fridge because we were afraid the technology would be outdated in 2 years when we're not ready to buy a new fridge yet. So I think it's interesting to start thinking about, like, okay, brands are not going to be selling me individual physical products anymore. They're selling me what they've got to offer. Samsung is now selling me a complete home kitchen solution, and with the service to go with it, and it's connected to my Amazon or my Alexa or my Google Home, and it will replenish my groceries as I use them. It will make it easier for me to cook, and I think that's what's really exciting for me. I've steered us away from the fear economy.
Yeah, thank you.
And into, you said store, and then I kind of went towards the more consumer and commerce economy and convergence of a lot of these technologies like voice and subscription and service.
you know, I think that is, you know, maybe it's the naive optimist or the one who wants to stay away from the fear side of it, but, you know, what is the for good side of this, right? So if you think about medication adherence, I'll bring us back to health, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? The failure of people to take their medicine leads to a huge amount of cost to the system. And, you know, what if that knowledge was used for good, which is if people aren't taking their medication as it is prescribed, right, they likely will not get the benefit of wellness that is intended. So how do we use that knowledge? There is a company called Proteus. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it is a pharmaceutical product in conjunction with a pharma company called Otsuka, and there is a smart pill. So you take that pill and it knows, there is information and knowledge, it knows whether or not you've taken that pill. One of our portfolio companies, Eckert Systems, is able to understand, by understanding the sweat, what's happening with your sweat, whether or not only have you taken the pill, but how are you kind of metabolizing that. And some people are fast metabolizers, some people are slow metabolizers. So Ann and I may get the same dose, and I may need twice as much as Ann. But if we get the same dose, one of us is over and one of us is under, and neither of us is optimized. So, again, maybe this is naively optimistic or want to be on the side of good. How can knowledge and data be used for positive outcomes, for outcomes that will move us forward?
So